Should be live on the candidates with a contract Facebook page in just a sec. Okay, here we go. Okay. Okay, hello everyone. I'm gonna give this just a second for everything to come online and give everyone a chance to share out to your own page if you like. So it's important that the country and the world know that it's more than just Mike Gravel and Tulsi Gabbard and Jill Stein that have come out and spoken in defense of WikiLeaks and Assange and against his extradition to the United States. And all the candidates here you probably won't see on mainstream media. They're all wonderful candidates that we've met over the past year that have been really working very hard to try to represent the people and not big money, special interests, whether it's healthcare or tuition or for college, and they're not bought by corporate money. Therefore, they're not too welcome on corporate news. So, yeah. So I guess I'll let Brian speak. He's a veteran and has something to say about all of it. So we'll start there, and then we'll go to each candidate and let you speak whatever you would like to say.
Okay, well, as you know, I'm Brian Ramirez. I'm out here in Orange County, California, and I work with both CFAR and CWAC. And I am a veteran. I was in the Navy for 10 years. And all I have to say really is this: no one and no entity should be above the law. What Assange uncovered with Chelsea Manning's help was simply that the U.S. government had classified a war crime in order to cover it up. That's not really up for debate. The families of those who were murdered deserve justice, and for our government to decide to just cover it up is absolutely abhorrent. As a veteran, this is not something I would have condoned if I had witnessed it myself. Manning did the right thing by bringing it to the light of day. Whatever you might personally think of Assange is irrelevant. This is about the freedom of speech and freedom of the press. This is the most clear case of shooting the messenger that I can possibly think of. And really all I have to say.
Okay, so what we're going to do now, if you can just remember who is right in front of you. So we'll start with you, Jeff, and then we'll go to Rich, and then David and Bill will just go along because I'm going to switch to speaker view so people can see you more clearly and you can tell who you are and where you ran for office. So, just 1 minute. Here we go. Okay. So go ahead and start, Jeff.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jeff Young. I'm one of the 4 Democrats running right now for governor of Kentucky. So I'm a current candidate. The Kentucky primary is on May 21st, 2019, and the general election will be in November. I'm the only candidate for governor. Oh, there are 4 Republicans running too. I'm the only candidate for governor who has talked at all about foreign policy, in the sense that the incumbent governor, Republican Matt Bevett, has supported the idea of punishing organizations and individuals that endorse the BDS movement, boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel. So this event of arresting Julian Assange is really an action of the empire. The empire has many tentacles, and they extend to Britain, apparently to Ecuador. And so what we're fighting is an empire in decline. And it is doing everything it can to control the narrative, to stifle independent voices who would resist the war crimes that the empire routinely commits, whether it is Israel-Palestine or Iraq or Syria or Venezuela. The empire has all these tentacles, and we're trying to fight them all. But the media is critical. I meet so many of my friends who believe that there's something wrong with Assange. They don't trust him because of what they've been hearing for the last N number of years. We have to, it's a media war. We have to defeat their false narrative and replace it with the truth.
Right. Thank you, Jeff. Actually, Tim, do you want to go next?
Sure, I'd be glad to.
Okay.
I'm Tim Canova. I've run in Florida's 23rd Congressional District as a Democrat in 2016, as an independent in 2018, against the incumbent Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I think it's important to remember where this narrative of Julian Assange's collusion with Russia first started. And it started with Debbie Wasserman Schultz when she was chair of the Democratic National Committee, trying to pin the DNC leaks on a hack rather than an internal leak. And that's an important issue that's really never been done. When I read the 7-page indictment against Julian Assange, all they're charging him with is conspiracy to encourage Chelsea Manning to hack into secure government computer files. It's a very flimsy type of an indictment. I can imagine had the federal government tried to charge the New York Times with the same conspiracy charges during the Pentagon Papers, I think it would have been thrown out of court by the Supreme Court, if not a lower federal court, and I'm certainly hoping the same will happen here with Assange. They're not charging him with any crime related to the DNC wiki, the leaks from the DNC in 2016. And they're not because they can't even really prove that case. When the DNC leaks occurred, Wasserman Schultz was the chair of the DNC. James Comey was the FBI director. Comey requested to inspect the DNC servers 3 times, and 3 times Debbie Wasserman Schultz said no. That alone is really breathtaking when you think about it. A Democratic administration, a Democratic Justice Department, run by a Democratic administration, and the Democratic Party gets hacked, or claims it gets hacked, suffers a terrible leak, and they don't trust their own FBI in a Democratic administration to inspect their servers. And the FBI takes no for an answer. They don't seize the servers, they don't subpoena the servers, they just end up relying upon the findings of a private internet security firm called CrowdStrike that Wasserman Schultz hired to look into this. CrowdStrike was headed by an anti-Putin Russian. So right there, you've got political bias. Based on the CrowdStrike finding, CrowdStrike claimed that the DNC had been hacked by Guccifer, which was allegedly some Russian hacking operation. And Guccifer had gone online boasting about hacking for Russia, which right there doesn't seem all that credible. If they were going to hack, why would they be boasting that they were doing it for Russia? Based on that, 3, not 17, but 3 U.S. intelligence agencies accepted the findings and concluded with some reasonable degree of certainty, they said, that the DNC had been hacked by Russia. And, from there, it's a small step for them to claim that Julian Assange and WikiLeaks were acting in cahoots with Russia. The National Security Administration never joined those findings, and that's significant because the NSA really has access to just about anything that happens on the internet. I think what's much more believable is the report that came out from VIPs, Veterans of Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. VIPS is a group that includes Mike Gravel and Bill Binney and Jim McGovern and a number of other former intelligence officials. These were people who worked for U.S. intelligence agencies for decades in technical capacity. And what VIPS did was they analyzed the metadata and the transfer speed, and they concluded that this could not have even been a hack, that it had to have been a leak or leaks from within the DNC. So, during Mueller's investigation, what does he do? He basically just accepts the FBI finding that Russia hacked the DNC and did it with Julian Assange. And, the reason I bring this up is this is what has convicted Julian Assange in the court of public opinion for anyone who's a Democrat these days. It seems to be the party line to accept that Julian Assange is a terrible character who was working with the Russians to bring down Hillary Clinton and get Donald Trump elected. It's a false narrative. I think it tries to kill two birds with one stone. It tries to distract people from the real reasons for the Democrats' loss in 2016, and at the same time tries to take out somebody like Assange, who's, when you look at WikiLeaks and what they've done, exposing state secrets of the highest magnitude, or war crimes, from the Iraq war logs, Afghanistan war logs, the Gitmo material. And if you don't have publishers who are able to publish leaks, you don't really have much of a free press. You don't have a watchdog on government. I'll just say one more thing, which is that you get a lot of folks who also try to say, Assange and WikiLeaks, they're a non-state foreign actor. I forgot what the CIA labeled them. That they're basically an arm of Russian intelligence or some nonsense like that. Well, in September of 2017, WikiLeaks released what they called Spy Files Russia. Think about that. September 2017. Spy Files Russia revealed how a technology company basically connected to the Kremlin helped the Russian state put together a nationwide system of online surveillance. So WikiLeaks has been publishing things that are embarrassing to those in power, regardless of where they are on the map. They've published things that were embarrassing to Iran and Syria, two allies of Russia. They published things that were embarrassing to Republicans. I remember they published Sarah Palin's emails that had been leaked to them. So this is not some kind of a partisan operation. WikiLeaks has been such an important news outlet, publishing secrets of war crimes that Americans should be aware of. Americans should not be in the dark about what is going on, what kind of wars are being fought, and how they're being fought in our name.
Well, much of the public, I think, wouldn't know that about the Russian spy files because we had our own media, I believe it was Chris Cuomo, tell people that it was illegal for anyone else to look at WikiLeaks. Remember that?
I remember that.
Yeah,
I do.
So, and it's shocking to me how many people, when I talk to people just, in my neighborhood and that haven't even seen Collateral Murder still to this day.
Right.
And I think that really changes people's view on all of it when they see that and say, okay, that is what Chelsea Manning leaked. I mean, that's really the biggest piece of
And Collateral Murder was video taken from a U.S. helicopter gunship. Correct me if I got this wrong. I believe in Iraq, it might have been in Baghdad, in which the helicopter gunship killed two Reuters reporters,
right,
as well as children, I believe.
Yes.
And then when an ambulance came, killed those in the ambulance. These are war crimes.
Right. Well, the children were not actually killed, but the van was shot up. And there's an interview. It's on RT, so people will probably be scared to watch it. But it's the soldier that actually carried the kids from the vans, and his life is just wrecked. He's a mess. But
So,
it's on RT. You can find it.
Kelly,
But
I'd like to just say one more thing.
of course. Well,
That,
you have all this, like, you're very good at explaining it all, so go ahead.
well, thanks. This is now in the Trump administration's hands.
Hmm.
And there are lots of folks in U.S. intelligence agencies that want to lock Julian Assange up for a long time.
Hmm.
I hope that Donald Trump and those who are near Donald Trump understand that the people who framed Julian Assange, who wrongly claimed that he was colluding with Russia to hack the DNC, are the same people who lied to a FISA court to get a warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. Okay?
Yes.
There are lots of folks who have now been implicated in this FISA gate.
Hmm.
I don't know what else to call it. Lying to a FISA court to get a warrant to surveil Donald Trump's campaign. James Comey, perhaps Loretta Lynch, Brennan. These are the same folks who were fined with not inspecting the DNC servers, relying on Debbie Wasserman Schultz's cronies at CrowdStrike, and slandering and persecuting Julian Assange. I hope the Trump administration understands that, and I hope if they do extradite Julian, I hope that they don't extradite Julian Assange, but if they do, I hope that they are able to have some kind of an immunity deal. The truth needs to come out, what happened to those how the DNC leak came about. And, Julian Assange should not be persecuted by the Trump administration.
No, and the scary thing, I just want to say this and we'll move on to everyone else, is that the indictment itself, it does say that it's for the alleged hacking, that he assisted in hacking using a password or whatever with Chelsea Manning.
But not hacking for the DNC. It was
No.
hacking on the Gitmo file.
Right,
Yes.
exactly. In 2010, I guess. So, but what's
Right.
scary is you're still seeing on mainstream media that they're just still talking about it being connected to Russiagate.
Right.
And the scary thing is what will, if you listen to Daniel Ellsberg or John Kiriakou talk about, like, that may just be the start of it. And people said, oh, well, this isn't that bad. He might only get 5 years. But what are they going to pile on after if they were to be able to extradite him? And what precedent does it set for us? Our country can just go grab someone else who's not a U.S. citizen and charge them with espionage. I mean, you imagine if North Korea started doing that to our citizens. I mean, it's shocking. So anyway, okay, we'll move on to, let's see, we're out of, how about Bill? Do you want to go next? Oh, there you go.
All right, there you go. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
All right, my name's Bill Bass, and I live in Syracuse, New York, and I previously ran for Congress as an independent in New York's 24th Congressional District. And I've actually since then become a Green Party member, and the Green Party has been very adamant that we should not be at all going after Julian Assange. And for me, this is something that's very personal because I spent about 10 years almost living in Saudi Arabia, where we don't have freedom of the press. And I see that, we're doing basically what they do to journalists over there. We're telling them they cannot be talking against the government, they cannot be exposing secrets. And if we're going to start arresting journalists, what's next? Are we going to start killing them as well? It just, to me, is a very slippery slope that we should not even be going towards. I mean, look, our founding fathers put freedom of the press in the First Amendment because it was so important, because we needed to have this check on government. And, it just is flying in the face of the Constitution that we would go after somebody who was exposing the corruption and the war crimes that our empire is actually doing. And so I think we really need to be adamant in his protection. And I really wanted to touch on what you said, Kelly, about how, right now they're only indicting him on one charge, but, we've seen this time and time again, not with journalists per se, but in many other instances where they'll indict you on one charge, and then once they get you, they'll start piling on charge after charge after charge. And that really doesn't help our democracy, and it definitely doesn't help the freedom of the press that is enshrined in our Constitution. And so I think we need to be very careful as citizens, and I think we need to speak up, especially those of us who know the truth and the story, because our media is either afraid to talk about it or they just don't want to. So.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's see. Jason?
Hi there. My name is Jason Kishinev. I ran for Congress as a Green in 2018 in District 5, California, and I'm running as a Democrat in 2020. What's that?
Sorry, we had a little glitch. Keep going.
I thought there was a question. Sorry. The American people have been so propagandized to, and for so long, that many of us no longer know what the truth is when we hear it. The people have instead put their faith in symbols instead of truth, and symbols like Trump or Clinton, blue or red. And if anyone questions that symbol, that person must be wrong, even if they're right. When Julian Assange was questioning human rights abuses and war crimes under the Bush administration, he was just fine with elected Democrats. But when he showed us that Citigroup picked Barack Obama's cabinet, that released the Podesta emails and the Clinton emails, and showed us that the DNC and Clinton campaign colluded to rig the primary in 2016, Mr. Assange became a troll, a Russian agent, a Trump supporter to those same people. Why? Because he questioned their symbol, in this case, Hillary Clinton. After all, he couldn't possibly have any possible other motive besides hurting her. It couldn't be to tell the truth to the American people or to prevent democracy from being hijacked. The corporate political establishment has people so fiercely loyal to their party rather than their own ideals, which is really quite scary. It reminds one of George Orwell's 1984, The Destruction of Truth in Protection of the Party. It was Orwell, by the way, who said, during times of universal deceit, telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act. And Mr. Assange is certainly a revolutionary journalist in a very select group, and I thank Mr. Assange. And I fear for his safety because we've seen, and this is no joke, we've seen what happens to people who have damning evidence against the Clintons. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, Pat?
Hey, thanks for having me on, Kelly.
Of course.
Well, you mentioned the collateral murder. I'd like to talk about that. My name's Pat Elder. I ran against Steny Hoyer, who's the majority leader in the House now. And I got 1.4% of the vote. I raised $100 a day for 6 months. And Steny raised $100,000 a day for 6 months.
Right.
Kind of puts it in perspective, I don't know. I have a pretty simple view. I just think of myself as Bradley Manning then. Chelsea now. And, if I saw the images across my computer screen showing indiscriminate killing of people, in this case civilians, I would have blown the whistle. I don't know what our numbers are. Maybe I'm only like 1 in a million now, but that's what I would have done. And I think it's important to understand that he reached out to the Washington Post and the New York Times, and they told him to go to hell. They said they weren't interested in what he had to say. They weren't interested in the video, and that's why he went to WikiLeaks.
Yeah.
So I think it's important, And I think for our adversaries, especially those in the faith community, it's a pretty compelling argument. Like, if I saw that, I'd blow the whistle, man. Wouldn't you? And, it just reduces it to a very morally simple equation. But that's all I have. I'll leave the politics to you all.
Okay. Rich, do you want to go next?
Yeah, well, I like following Pat because I agree with very much what he said. He really nailed it on the head in a lot of ways. Yet I ran for Congress in 1990, 2010, 2012, once as a Natural Law Party candidate and twice as a Green Party candidate. And most I ever got was about 10,000 votes, but spent about $300 or $400 on election, or maybe on my campaign, maybe 1,000 or something. But I'm an independent, and always have been. I'm trying to establish an independent voters alliance for getting everybody involved in politics. Right now, 66% of the eligible voters in this country do not vote. And that's especially true when we have these closed primaries. So one reason we have the situation we have with people not being represented by our governments is because people don't vote, because we're not allowed to vote in primaries. 70% of the people are pretty much excluded from voting, and the most important we have, which are the primaries, which people don't get from the election ballot. Anyway, getting back to Assange, I was a special agent in Army intelligence. I served from 65 to 68 back in the Vietnam era. And what I saw him do in Iraq, I think he was in the service, and I gave him access. He was in some kind of intelligence operation or some kind of command operation. So he had access to a lot of papers, a lot of the information that showed what was happening. He merely was a good journalist. I think that Julian Assange was an American hero. I always will think that. I've always thought that. I think that he is somebody who has integrity. I think he's somebody who's a reporter, somebody who let his conscience speak for him, and he exposed some things that should have been exposed. And, I think there's a lot of things that I learned when I was in intelligence, that you see stuff in the newspapers every day that are top secret. The only thing is it's not official. And that's the newspapers are very good reporters usually. Journalists do a very good job at telling what's going on in the world. But the only thing is, a lot of things are in there that are very highly classified. It's not the official government acknowledgement that that's what the case is. So, but so he was somebody who exposed some things that should have been exposed, and he kept on doing that all the way through the 2016 campaign. I think he probably did make some information available having to do with Hillary Clinton, maybe with things having to do with Donald Trump, but he wouldn't be, he's not somebody who would favor one or the other candidate or party. Somebody who's a reporter, he's a journalist, and I think that's how he should be treated. He's a publisher of journalistic viewpoints. And I think that he should be fully pardoned by the American government. He should go free. He should be able to come home and live as an American citizen. Like he should be living free in this country as a honored citizen of our nation.
Okay. See, I can't see everyone right now. Sanders, since you popped in and I see you right there, would you like to speak next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, great. This is Sander Hicks. I'm tuning in from New York City. I was a candidate for U.S. Congress as well. Mm-hmm. I ran up against Carolyn Maloney in the 12th Congressional District. Did not gain ballot access, and I gained a lot of lessons. And you can lose the lesson but not lose the war. I also have a background as an independent publisher. I stood up against the Bush family and the 9/11 cover-up. I've done books about the Bush family and the war on terror. And so Julian Assange actually contacted me before he was super famous and wanted me to maybe be involved somehow in this new group called WikiLeaks in the late 90s. I kind of thought it sounded like a bad name for a group, and I didn't really follow up with him. So, but it's really funny that he then just became this, international cause celeb. And so I actually stood up today. I was inspired by a freaky turn of events at the Quaker meeting this morning. It's kind of a holy day. It's the start of a holy week in the Quaker tradition. We don't really think of that as traditional Christian things. But since it was Palm Sunday, I just really wanted to draw a correlation between Jesus being on one Sunday praised as a celebrity, and then the next Sunday or the next Friday vilified as a terrorist and a victim of the death penalty and the victim of the state. So I kind of made that correlation, and some people, I got a lot of feedback. There was a lot of mixed feelings about it. A couple of women came up to me and said they didn't support what I said because they had questions about his sexual crimes, and I said, well, those never really stuck. And other people said that they blamed Julian Assange for Trump because of the things that he published. And I said, well, was anything that he published not true? And they kind of admitted that I had a point there. I think the criminality of Hillary Clinton is legion, and it needs to be exposed, all the way from Vince Foster to the lists of the people that the Clintons killed. A lot of people don't know that Ken Starr was actually forced to put a whole section about the Vince Foster FBI witness intimidation at the end of the Ken Starr report. And I'm saying this as a lefty liberal Democrat, who's part of the DSA, part of the new upswing of serious, fierce progressives. So Julian Assange being attacked and being put into handcuffs is a huge crime against independent journalism. And as a fellow independent journalist, I'm aghast. And I'm grateful for what Julian Assange exposed, especially regarding criminal cover-up of the crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan and the Middle East, and Pizzagate, the WikiLeaks emails that related to the Podestas and that led to what's called the Pizzagate scandal. And when you Google Pizzagate right now, it's interesting that there's so much denunciation of the Pizzagate scandal as fake news. But I think if you look at the emails that were released by WikiLeaks, there's something there. The Podestas are not pure, innocent people. Hillary Clinton has a documented relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. This is documented. Jeffrey Epstein is a convicted pedophile. And there's a story there that is just too taboo for certain people to even go near. And WikiLeaks was courageous and said that they wanted to do something to expose the criminality of the Clintons, and that's what they did.
I just want to hold up this book. I don't know how well everyone can see it on here, but I don't know how many times I mention this book, Thomas Frank's book, Listen Liberal. Whenever I hear someone say, Trump won because of WikiLeaks, they're so out of touch. Trump won because of everything that's in this book, of how the Democratic Party turned their back on working people. So it's just ludicrous to me. But okay, let's see. Someone speak up. Let's see. Let me go back to gallery view for a second, and we'll see who we have not gotten to yet. Aha. Okay, David Hildebrand, would you like to go, and then we'll and then Adam.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, perfect. So I want to come at this from a different angle. I'm sure we all agree on what's going on right now and what should and shouldn't happen. But I'd like to come at it from the angle of whistleblowers. And basically, the suppression of whistleblowers is suppression of free speech and freedom of the press. But it's more than that. The fallout from cases like this go all the way down. Meaning, if someone needs to or sees something going wrong at their corporation they work for, or business they work for, they're going to think twice, if not three times, if they even say anything at all about what's going on. And, you think, oh, well, this is no big deal. We'll find out about it sooner or later or whatnot. It's not the case. If a vehicle manufacturer has a deadly vehicle, that's known by the corporation and they don't, no one comes out with that information, and the corporation obviously won't because of profits. And they're suppressing that, that right for the public to know by like basically putting a freeze on free speech and a freeze on whistleblowers coming out. And that goes all the way down to stuff like food safety. So, the stuff that you get at the store, if the meat's expired and they change the date on it and someone notices what they're doing and doesn't say anything, you're eating rotting meat or whatever else that may be. So it's the culture that we're creating as a country and, even locally, that we don't stand up for whistleblowers. That's going to put us in a world of hurt. And we're not gonna see the end of this soon. I doubt. I hope that WikiLeaks goes on. I know it's more than just Julian Assange, and I hope they go on and continue to expose these things. But at the same time, we need to all band together and stand up for whistleblowers in general. I know a lot of people, as was mentioned before, have personal issues with stuff they've heard about Julian Assange. That matters. It matters to investigate stuff and Me Too allegations and whatnot. But it also matters to remember that no one is going to be the perfect, angel of a person in every single aspect of their life. We all see that with politicians, even ones we support. They're not perfect, and they never will be. And when it comes down to it, the information that is coming out needs to be balanced on its own scale, not because of the source it came from. And I think that's probably the most important message is trust, the data that's true, no matter where it came from. If the Republicans, side or the far right says something that's true and exposes something that's true, then it's true. I mean, we're not their enemy when it comes to the truth. And I think a lot of the times, and like was mentioned earlier, red, blue politics, red, blue, green, purple, whatever, it's about teams, and it's about sticking up for your team, whether they're right or wrong. And that's what needs to change in politics. That's really all I have to say.
Thank you, David. Okay, and I think it was Adam that was going to go next. Adam Davis.
Hey, you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So I want to hit on a couple of things here. The first thing that I want to make sure and hit, and I know to a certain extent I'm probably preaching to the choir in terms of the audience of this video, but I just want to make sure if there's anybody that's watching this video that has any questions, that's not sure what to think about all this, I want them to walk away knowing one thing, and that is that Julian Assange is your advocate. Like we talked about, none of any questions that anyone has about Assange makes what he has published not true. The things that he has published are still true. There are still things we need to know, and there's still things that, he has every moral right to publish. The second thing I want to talk about is a little bit of, in this country we have, and I'm not sure I can pinpoint kind of how far this goes back, but we have an interesting thing that's happened in American culture where we have begun to equate legality and morality, and there's a serious notion that many people consider those to be the same thing, which they obviously are absolutely not. And frankly, I don't much care whether what Julian Assange did in terms of publishing is legal by US law or not, because what it was the moral thing to do. And for me, that absolutely trumps any bit of transient law. I mean, and that's the thing we need to remember. Laws change. It was illegal for 100 or 150 years in the southern United States to free slaves. It was illegal, for I mean, just throughout history, you look at what's legal and what's not legal, and it absolutely does not match up necessarily to what's moral. And so I think it's important to understand that distinction and to guide ourselves by what's moral, not what happens to be in a law at any particular point.
Thank you very much. Very good points, Adam. Thank you. So I think Brian was next. Brian Kresge? Correct me, please.
Oh, yeah, Brian Kresge. Yeah,
okay.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.
I started off last year as the Libertarian candidate for Maine's 2nd Congressional District. I ended up running instead for Maine State House, and to the delight of my wife and children, lost by a very narrow margin. So I was also the director of Jewish outreach for the Johnson Weld campaign in 2016. So I'm out of politics now, and I don't have too much to add that hasn't already been said, other than that to kind of offer a twist on Nemo. Where first they came for the journalists, and I don't know what happened after that. I saw that today on the internet, and made me kind of laugh. Not much to laugh about with this. What regard I hold Assange in, it's kind of moot. WikiLeaks is unequivocally a manifestation of the freedom of press. I've been in active duty and National Guard for about 25 years now. I hold a security clearance. I've held it for most of that. I have 3 years of overseas service, and I'm also a civilian computer programmer. And I was reading this indictment from both those angles. I'm familiar both with their cryptology, and I've used CyberNet, which Assange is accused of helping Manning hack in the indictment. It's the law enforcement's already made it clear that what we already know, that this indictment is just a Rudy Poot sentence. It's got a Rudy Poot sentence compared to the espionage charges they kind of already commuted Manning for. It's extradition fodder. Manning didn't even hack CyberNet herself. She just exploited poorly enforced military IT rules. And Assange's offer to crack a hash was never realistically or materially even relevant. So law enforcement knows that. And so once we have them here, it's discouraging that so few people ask what comes next, aside from people like us. And I know this exists on a continuum for a variety of continuums for us. Right now, we have an administration exhibiting overt hostility to the press at every turn. And I've been discouraged by this administration and the previous one, but more importantly, the press, just for underreporting on our involvement in Yemen. And we learned today operations in Somalia. These are operations undertaken with only like the nebulous permission granted by that old authorization from many years ago. And without independent news sources like WikiLeaks, we wouldn't even know. So, and the media doesn't need further disincentive to do their jobs. So here we are. So that's all I have to say.
That's a mouthful. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so Marcia Squire. Let's see, is Marcia here still? Are you muted? Let's see. Just a second. Oh, okay. I think you're muted. Hang on 1 second. There we go. I don't know why.
I'm unmuted by host.
Oh, I don't know how that happened. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
That's okay. I've been having a great time listening, so my random coughs aren't popping up on the screen.
Okay.
So thanks for having me. My name is Marcia Squire, and I ran for U.S. Congress twice. I ran in 2016 for U.S. House in Michigan's 14th District, and for U.S. Senate in 2018, which was the statewide race against Debbie Stabenow, the incumbent. I did come in third place this last time around with a little over 40,000 votes, about 40,200-ish recorded votes, which most of us know that that's the recorded vote, which is not the same as the true vote, right? Because we have these machines that aren't necessarily accurate or transparent. And so I think that's important to mention too.
You're absolutely right. Thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah, but that does not dissuade me from voting because Michigan had some really great ballot initiatives this last time around. And even though I didn't win my election, we have legalized cannabis now at the recreational level. We did voters, not politicians, to end gerrymandering, and we also have some other election reforms that we put into place. So you definitely want to vote, even if you don't like any of the candidates. But this thing that we have with, the truth and Julian Assange and freedom of the press and everything, I like that the other guy brought up about Jesus and Palm Sunday. I wanted to mention that, Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter to Michigan's first senator. This was before he even became senator. He was a publisher, or he wanted to become a publisher, and he wrote to Thomas Jefferson asking for his advice. This is back in 1807. Thomas Jefferson even warned about propaganda coming out of newsprint. So this isn't a new fight. Even the Bible itself is somewhat propagandized over the course of the thousands of years it's been in existence. But the Bible's kind of a hybrid because it is kind of like the word of mouth that was written down, but we don't really know for sure. But the message of the Bible has basically remained the same. But the difference between, freedom of the press and freedom of speech being, and the press being corporate media and independent media, speech being, word of mouth, or back in the olden days, the soldiers would write letters home, and nowadays we use social media. That is, the freedom of speech. The Telecommunications Act of 1996, is what made the monopoly that we have going on over in the corporate media, which is why they are not really fans of Julian or Assange either, because if you follow the money, he's not one of those 5 people that own 90% of the media. So obviously he's not their friend, So we have always had the struggle for the new fourth estate. And to me, Julian is kind of like the godfather of the new fourth estate. He's the godfather of truth to me, because the truth hurts. But, even back in Jesus's days, prophets were persecuted for telling the truth, and there's always going to be that imbalance of justice, where the elite are getting away with everything. But, we have the highest prison population on the planet over stupid things like cannabis. But, I did want to mention also a few things I wouldn't know and I'm grateful for because of Julian. First and foremost being the TPP. We wouldn't know what was even in that document had it not been for WikiLeaks, which was NAFTA on steroids. We wouldn't know about the NSA illegal spying if it wasn't for Edward Snowden. We wouldn't know about the collateral murder if not for Manning. We wouldn't know about the DNC leaks, and the Pied Piper candidate. I knew all along that Trump was a Clinton plant gone rogue, and that confirmed it for me. I already wasn't going to vote for Hillary, but at least I knew I wasn't crazy. And then also Vault 7 and 8, which came out after that, which was, to me, basically the NSA leaks on steroids. If you thought the NSA spying on us and having everything wasn't bad enough, we've got TV spying on us even when they're off, and all kinds of crazy things like that I am so grateful to know that keeps getting brushed under the rug, because of that imbalance of power that we talk about in the never-ending battle, between truth and lies. So lastly, I would like to mention that I'm not running for office this time. I'm on hiatus right now, but I do want to verbally support Tulsi Gabbard for president. She gets my official endorsement. I met her last summer, and I have been a fan of hers pretty much nonstop since mid-2016, after Bernie endorsed the very thing he ran against. She's been kind of my new mentor. She's my girl, and I really appreciate her speaking out in favor of Julian. Even before this had come about, she was speaking out in his favor. Even Julian's mother had taken notice of Tulsi's support of Julian. So for that reason alone, I think it's important to mention that, to me, that is a litmus test. We got to support freedom of the press, the corporate media too, but we really need to cut those apron strings and support the new fourth estate. Even Tulsi will be on a show like Nico House. She, just the same as she's on CNN. You really got to take a look at the people that aren't just talking the talk, but they're walking the walk. And, with that being said, thanks for having me on, Kelly. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Marcia. Marcia's from my home state and area. Okay, Sam, are you still here? Sam Ronan? Let's see. Let me go back to gallery view here. Oh, there you are. Okay, yes.
I'm here. So, first and foremost, thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure to be able to be among such August members. Rich, I wanted to say it's a pleasure to have fellow service members on board, especially during that era of Vietnam. I mean, honestly, thank you for what you've done for our country. Tim, it's always nice to see you as well. And Marcia, I know we got to work together for a little while as well. So I just wanted to hit on the point that I think, and I don't want to say it negatively, but I think we're missing one major point here. Whatever happened to Julian Assange and whatever he leaked, and the same thing with Chelsea and Snowden, their whistleblowing is going to set the stage for what happens next in the current Trump administration. See, I was in the military too, and we got our briefing as soon as WikiLeaks came out that if we so much as look at it, that's a dishonorable discharge, and our careers are over, our lives are over. So I never looked at it. I'm still a reservist. I'm still not going to look at it. What's happening now? What's happening currently in the Trump administration with ICE and the immigration policies and how horrifically we're treating them? What happens to Julian Assange, what happens to Chelsea Handler, what happens to Snowden, will determine what happens to the people who may or may not try and whistleblow what's currently happening in ICE. And that to me is the biggest concern. If Julian Assange, gets hanged and thrown into whatever gulag they can find for him, that means nobody else is going to come forward with these atrocities that we have been committing in the recent 2 years. The other problem is America is not new to committing war crimes, if we want to call them that. People want to talk about the Holocaust and Hitler and Stalin, but we committed our own Holocaust here against Native Americans. We slaughtered them by the tens of millions. 100 million Native Americans populated this continent, our country, and they have been decimated down to a few parcels of land and a few 100,000, few million, if that. So when we have these kind of crimes that we are still held on account for, slavery is the next one. We had Jim Crow laws up until 1965. We were experimenting on our own American citizens in the 1960s. We have far more things that need whistle on, and the problem is if we are going to watch and sit by as our country just absolutely eviscerates those few people who are brave enough to do so, nobody's going to come forward. Our progressive movement will come to a screeching halt because we will be crushed under heel by whatever forces that be. And that, to me, is the biggest concern. Look at the Trump administration. Look at law enforcement, the increase of violence and brutality. Look at how activist movements have been utterly underhanded, just completely crushed before they even get off their feet. Then look at the infighting within those movements that still exist and persist today. Yes, we have Tulsi Gabbard. Yes, we have Bernie Sanders. Some might even argue we have Elizabeth Warren and Gillibrand. However, they are singular individual people, and the country as a whole is largely ambivalent to all of this. And that's the problem. We don't have a society that wants to stand up and fight. We don't have an anti-war movement. We don't have a peace movement. We have is a bunch of people content in their current imperial life. And I forget who said the American empire. We are an empire, if not in name, in fact, we are absolutely an empire. And right now, we're the Romans at the fall of Rome, of the Senate. I mean, quite frankly, look at the power that Trump is usurping with his executive orders, keeping people in acting positions, offering pardons to federal secretaries and so on and so forth for committing crimes, for actually violating crimes. the fact that we pulled out of the Human Rights Council and are making ourselves immune to prosecution by the United Nations by denying them visas. We are dealing with far more than Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, and Chelsea Manning being persecuted and, quite frankly, being treated as witches in Salem. We're dealing with a moral crisis in our society. And it's one that I hope these kind of panels continue to bring to light. However, someone else said it's the corporate media that is, in fact, the biggest threat to our current status and future. The problem here is we have people like Ian Omar, we have people like AOC, we have people who are young, who are part of this movement, who are POC, who are giving voice to the voiceless. They're singular, and they're being attacked at all fronts, and even within their own organizations and followership. So what we need to start doing, and what I hope really comes out of this, is that everybody here starts working together, that we start promoting these actions to really educate people. I founded Our Voice, and we have that app. It's Hello Voter now. And what it does is it allows you to see who is currently elected in your location, and eventually it'll start finding candidates. And also, when you do canvassing efforts, I mean, any sort of questionnaire, really, it allows you to track that data and hold on to it to yourself. That's something that Nation Builder and MPG Van have monopolized for years, ever since that existed. So now we have tools and resources. We have the blacklisting that is being started by Justice Democrats. These are the kinds of tools and resources that we need to get out there without coming off as extremists. And that's the other issue. Everyone on this panel is going to be labeled an extremist. It doesn't matter that I served, doesn't matter that Rich served, doesn't matter that Tim Canova has been in the public eye for the past several years. Doesn't matter. Does not matter in the slightest, because what are we doing? We are saying things that the status quo does not want to be said. And therefore, we will be labeled as the extreme left, these leftists that just want to dismantle everything. Of course, that isn't the case. But it's about being able to vocalize and present these very real truths in a way that is palatable to the public. And what I have found is by simply explaining, how is the present any different than any other cover-up in the past, be it the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., be it anything that happened during the Civil Rights Movement, be it anything that happened during the Cold War, or if we even go further back to World War II, World War I, slavery, for crying out loud, and the genocide of Native Americans. How is this any different? It's no different than journalists saying that slaves are being mistreated in the South and being tortured for pleasure, or that Native Americans were being hunted like animals and given out tags by the same government agency that was meant to protect them. How is this any different? What we're doing with ICE and immigrants? How is this any different than what we're prosecuting these journalists, these whistleblowers who are shedding light on these atrocious and appalling tragedies that are happening in the present day? Mm-hmm. So my 2 cents is we need to absolutely, protect our journalists, but more than that, we need to empower those who would come forward. There are plenty of people working in ICE that could step forward, who might step forward. One of the reasons why I want to get out of the military entirely is because if I was given orders to go to one of these detention centers, and believe you me, military is absolutely involved in this process. There are warehouses on several military installations throughout the continental United States, which are in fact housing and detaining immigrants, or refugee seekers or asylum seekers. And God only knows what's happening there, let alone in the private sector. So imagine an E4 and E5 who's been in the military for maybe 4 or 5 years, just wants to serve, just wants to do his time and get out, maybe even do 20 years. Maybe they just signed up for the GI Bill and the healthcare benefits. I mean, this economy is pretty appalling in that regard too. They are going to be terrified. The same way, I won't say I was terrified, but I was definitely cowed when I was an airman. I was told that I would be dishonorably discharged, and I know what that means in this country. You would be destroyed. You would not have a life. Yet, I chose to leave active duty. And I was never in a position to see these crimes to be committed. Otherwise, I absolutely would have brought them up. But we see what's happening with Julian Assange, Chelsea Manning, Edward Snowden, and so many others who have attempted to give voice to these appalling horrors happening on American soil. How many activists have been showing up dead lately? How many progressive judges have been showing up dead? Judges, council members, people who have earned elected office and have a career, a lifetime of service and dedication to their country and their citizenry, are being murdered. They aren't committing suicide. They aren't accidentally finding themselves on the wrong side of town. They are being hunted. So until or unless we can create this awareness, we're going to be finding ourselves in a position of fear. Now, what I'm about to say is probably radical, but JFK did say it best. If you make peaceful protest impossible, you make violent retribution inevitable. And unfortunately, we only have a couple of years to prevent that prophecy from coming true. And I pray that those of you who have ran before, use those tools and resources that are at your disposal and keep running. But more so than running, you need to elevate one another. You need to work together. You need to bring like-minded people up with you. If you're going to run for Congress, find 7 other people who surround you in your districts and run with them. If you're going to run for governor, make sure you're supporting the state senates, state representatives, judgeships, whatever. We cannot afford to be islands unto ourselves. And unfortunately, too much of that has been going on. Some of us have been trying our best. Tim Canova, I know you've gotten on Fox News and given shout outs to people. I've been on CNN and given shout outs to people. And I'm not saying the rest of you are just out for your own good. What I am saying is this message to the American people, whoever watched this, now is the time to band together, to put ego aside and simply succeed. Elevate one another, work together, and fight for a better tomorrow while we still can.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Thank you. Yeah, really why I wanted to do this and put everyone together here is to really show, like I said at the beginning, the country and the world that it's not just a couple of candidates, Tulsi, thank you, and Mike Gravel and Jill Stein for speaking out, but that there are all these candidates you don't normally hear from. And if we do band together, maybe that message will resonate with people more. So if anyone wants to say anything more about WikiLeaks or Assange or press freedom or anything that we've missed, please speak up now. And
there's something I'd like to add.
Book. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Now, one thing I wanted to add that I forgot to touch on was, especially now with Trump's new rule that they're not going to be releasing, the number of citizens that are killed by these drone attacks, that we are continuing to increase around the world each day. And I think it's really important that we have these independent journalists who can tell us this, who can let us know what's happening, because the government is going to continue to hide this in secret. And this is something, as we try to use less troops and make it using more drones, we're going to be able to killing more civilians. And that's something important to me, and I know it's something important to many people around me. And we need to be able to have the freedom to be able to tell these stories. So, thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I got one last thing I'd like to say.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, I just wanted to say that I don't want to end on a note of darkness. And I totally agree with Mr. Ronan, who was just on talking about the assassination of Martin Luther King, and that is an uninvestigated murder by the deep state. But what's even more powerful is to remember that Martin Luther King used nonviolence and interfaith awareness and powerful spiritual truths and political truths to create a unstoppable wave of social change. And that's the kind of vision that we are going to have to stay connected to, that kind of light, that powerful, democratic, nonviolent, Gandhian energy. And I think that is, I know I can get really caught up in analyzing the darkness of people like Jeffrey Epstein or all that stuff. But I wanted to emphasize that I got a lot out of this meeting today, the Zoom conference with you all, and to know that you are out there gives me hope. Thank you.
Right. And again, that's why I wanted to do this, because I think, if it's just you alone, you might not want to speak out. But when you start having other people gather around you, that it empowers you. So that was the whole idea with this. And I hope to get this out to a lot of other independent media so that maybe it can spread, and maybe there are more candidates, more people, maybe more journalists that would come out and speak for press freedom, for whistleblowers, and this
Kelly,
is
Kelly,
yes,
may I add a word?
absolutely. Go ahead.
Thanks. I'm glad that you brought up collateral murder earlier. You hear the argument made against WikiLeaks that by publishing those war files, from Iran, Afghanistan, Gitmo, that it endangered the lives of Americans. And it's actually in the government's case against Bradley Manning, Chelsea, when it was Bradley Manning. The government itself never made the allegation that Americans had anyone had perished as a result of these releases. You got to remember the Pentagon Papers. The Pentagon Papers was basically a top secret report of the Office of the Defense Secretary, recounting America's involvement in the Vietnam War from the end of World War II to 1967. And it was released by the New York Times during the war. The same argument could have been made that it was going to endanger American lives. It was, in hindsight, the Pentagon Papers likely saved a lot of lives, American lives included. And the same with the release of collateral murder. The sooner that Americans could realize that they were on the wrong path in Vietnam, just like the sooner that they could realize we were on the wrong path in the war in Iraq, that's when things start changing. This country has to live up to its highest ideals and standards. And the kind of things revealed by the Pentagon Papers showed that the U.S. military and political leadership were lying to the American public. Up until then, the American public didn't even know about secret bombing campaigns, didn't know about the Gulf of Tonkin lie that got us into the Vietnam War. It is so important if this country is going to get itself together and to stop being such an international war criminal in so many ways, to stop fighting these foreign wars, for the truth to be coming out. And, I think that's the importance of what's happening right now. I hope everyone sees this as such a pivotal moment. It's not just Assange who's being persecuted, it's everyone else in WikiLeaks. They arrested somebody else in Ecuador who's tied to WikiLeaks and Assange. It says so much that the New York Times would publish the Pentagon Papers in 1971, but they would say no to Bradley Manning's offers to release such newsworthy information, secret cables and things. And when I mention Bradley Manning, I don't mean any disrespect to Chelsea Manning. It's just to indicate that at the time of the release of the document.
Right.
Chelsea Manning is paying a terrible price again right now for our press freedom. And, this is the First Amendment which is at stake. It's the First Amendment, which is why the New York Times, I'm sure, felt it could publish the Pentagon Papers when it did. But if Julian Assange is persecuted, prosecuted, convicted, and imprisoned, and he's already been in prison for several years, if this continues, there's not much left of the First Amendment. There's not much left. And David Hildebrand said this very well. The whistleblowers are out there to protect the public from all kinds of dangers, and it's not just war, it's also all kinds of corporate predations here at home. And finally, I just want to agree with what Marcia Squire said. And to praise Tulsi Gabbard and also Mike Gravel. Mike Gravel is a member of VIP, and I'm glad that Tulsi Gabbard is going to be on the debate stage, and I hope that Mike Gravel will be as well. I think they're the only candidates on the Democratic side that have said a word for Julian Assange. It's disappointing that there are other candidates who have a very large voice who could make a difference to speak up for Julian Assange. And I hope that everyone puts the pressure on everyone to step up and do that now.
Yes.
And just finally, thank you for putting this on. I enjoyed everybody's comments very much.
I kind of figured you might all band together and speak out. So thank you so much. It's been honestly just inspiring to meet all of you over the last year. Well, Bill, just now meeting you, but you've all stood up for the little guy, and that's, we got an echo here. And that's what matters. And I think we have to think of ways, how do we reach our neighbors? What's so funny?
Sanders in the bathroom.
Oh. What? Oh, okay.
Sanders,
Sorry about that, guys.
But you're not
I had my
muted. It
video
keeps
on.
cutting you.
I hit my video. It's getting late here, guys. You like my pink toothbrush? This is in honor of Chelsea Mann.
We have we're broadcasting new leaks, I guess.
Kelly, can I say a couple more words?
Absolutely.
Toilet flushes.
Go ahead.
Who, me?
Anybody.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say if they successfully bring Assange here and prosecute him, that really is just the beginning. Then they're going to be coming after Jimmy Dore and Amy Goodman and Glenn Greenwald and Lee Fong and all the other journalists that speak out against the establishment. This is really the beginning of a very bad situation if we can't rise up and put a stop to this. Mm-hmm. And I also want to commend Tulsi Gabbard, who I'm also supporting, because she is really, really bold, and I appreciate her.
I think we have to think of ways to talk to our neighbors, like tell people about the collateral murder video. And anybody else has other ideas how to break through that propaganda that they've been consuming from the corporate news. It's really hard to break through. So I don't know. I think that video really does it.
What one thing is this candidate named Andrew Yang that has come on the scene, and I think that he has some very important and very interesting things to say.
Mm-hmm. I haven't heard him speak about.
I hope he has some influence on the other candidates.
Mm-hmm.
He will be on the debate stage, the way I understand it.
Okay, so, good.
Be interesting man to listen to. He did a CNN town hall tonight.
Oh, okay, good.
Did the subject of Assange come up?
I haven't seen it. I don't think so. I never have heard him mention him, but I haven't seen him since he was arrested. So.
I wish somebody would ask Bernie Sanders the question.
Exactly.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Well,
really.
And I think.
I don't think he should have to be asked.
No, he shouldn't have.
Seriously,
to.
You're absolutely right at that. Yep.
And I think, anybody that doesn't mention it, I mean, if they're scared to do so, I mean, again, this isn't about Assange, just Assange, or about his personality. But I do hear that a lot when I start talking about WikiLeaks, and they just have a problem with him personally, and they don't get the greater implications on journalism and freedom of the press. But that's because of our corporate news, so it's really hard to crack through. But I think we all just have to keep being vocal, and I just want to thank all of you for coming on and doing this. And I'm hoping that this video might be shared widely, I hope, and maybe can lead to you guys going on some other independent media maybe and voicing your support for WikiLeaks and Assange and journalism. So, okay.
And Kelly, thank you so much for organizing this, and it's been an honor to be with everybody. Thank you.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you everyone for the coming on such short notice too. I just thought of it on Friday, so okay.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Great to meet you.
All right.
Great.
Good night.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.